Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Um, yes, we'll just jump right in and get started. I do want to say, this is great. I love all the attendance tonight, and it's such an important topic. Really the credit becomes such a cornerstone of your whole entire financial picture, whether it's you want to buy a car, you want to get into a house, credit cards, whatever. And tonight we're going to kind of touch on some of the components of the credit report, what generates your credit score, and most importantly, to give you some guidance and some top tips moving forward. So with that, we'll go ahead and just jump right in. And the two basic questions here are: number one, where does all this information come from? Who stores it, and how can I know more about it? So those are the key questions we're going to answer. The first, we go to the next slide. There we go. All this information is stored at 3 national repositories, and a lot of you have probably heard of them before. It's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. There's the contact information for each of them. They house all of this data on you and all of your transactions. Some key takeaways from them: they're competitors, so they don't share information with each other. They are all their own little island, if you will, collecting their own data. And what happens is, some of the creditors don't report to all 3 of them. Years ago when the credit industry first started, it was very geographic. Like Equifax was very strong on the East Coast, TransUnion was very, very strong in the Midwest, and Experian out more toward the West. And regional creditors would only report to the bureau that was in their backyard. Well, over time, that's kind of changed, and now you see that 95% of all creditors do report to all 3 bureaus. But there are still some ones out there that don't. And that's later on in the presentation, we'll kind of talk about why that's important and what you can do to kind of make sure you're taking advantage of that situation on your own personal credit report. Another thing that's interesting is, because they're all competitors, they're all getting data at different points in time, and they're updating their databases at different points in time. So if I'm Ford Motor Credit and I send all of my consumers data to all 3 tonight, well, Equifax may batch it tomorrow. TransUnion may wait and batch it next Monday, and Experian may do it sometime in the next 10 days. We just don't know. So that's why your credit is always this moving piece. And there's really no way for sure to guarantee when something is going to report at each of the bureaus. So when we have good credit information, that's great. That can stay on the credit report as long as we want. We don't really care about that. That's always going to help you out. But derogatory information, that's a different story. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it's an act by the federal government that mandates that if one of these bureaus wants to put something negative about you on your credit report, they have to follow a certain framework. And the framework says, okay, if you're going to put a collection or if you're going to put a late payment on someone's credit report, there's a statute of limitations. And after that ends, it has to come off. So as you see on the slides here, we've got pretty much 7 years for everything, with the exception of a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which that's 10 years. And what that means, it's very important, is that, hey, if you had an event 6.5 years ago and you're thinking about buying a car, buying a house, well, you know that, hey, in 6 months, that information is going to fall off the credit report. And, of course, once derogatory information falls off, that's going to help your credit score. So the next piece here. So the bureaus have all this data on you. They have all your payments that you've made. They have your high credit limit and what you currently owe on everything. And what do they do with it? Well, over the years, they've decided that the best way to streamline lending is to do credit scores. And what that does, instead of having someone manually have to sit there and look at every single trade line like they did 25, 30 years ago, all they look at now is the credit score. So that's all they care about. And what happens is that credit score is just like a grade that you get when you were in school. It's a statistical method looking at all of your data on your credit report, and it's trying to predict something. And in the mortgage space particularly, they're trying to predict whether you're going to have a 90-day late payment at any time in the next 24 months. So that's what it's trying to predict. And that's why the higher the credit score, the lower the likelihood is that you are going to have that particular problem. Now, how it does that is it uses a scorecard, like I just mentioned, a grading system, if you will, and it weights things differently. We're going to go through each one and kind of give you an idea of how that impacts. So just to show a sample here, when you do have your credit report pulled, very basic information. It's going to give, your name. It's going to give your the summary of your social security number and your address and all the header information. And then it's going to assign a score. You're going to get a score at each of the bureaus. And right underneath that score, the bureaus have to disclose what makes up that, what are the most important things that make up that credit score. So in this particular case, this borrower has a 655, and the number one reason is reason code 15, which is they have balances that are too high on their revolving accounts. Then they have too many inquiries in the last 12 months, and then too many balances, and then the length of time. So those are the four big factors that consumer has going on. And it's just a way for you to kind of look at it and say, okay, these are the reasons why my score is what it is. So what is not included? And these are all very important items here. So all of those items that you see on the screen have no bearing whatsoever on your credit score or on your credit report. And a lot of them are obviously, pretty self-explanatory. But one thing that always trips people up is the interest rate that can be charged on a particular card. There's a lot of misconceptions out there that, if I have a 0% interest rate or a 2% interest rate, that's going to be better for me than a 15 or 20% interest rate. And that's not true. It really doesn't matter what your interest rate is. What does matter is whether you're paying that on time and what your balances are on that. So just important to take note of that. The range in credit score. So each bureau has their own version of the score. And inside of each bureau, they have different versions where they're looking at different things. Like, for example, the insurance industry has a credit score range. The mortgage has a range. The credit cards are going to use one. If we could go to the next slide, we'll see. There we go. This here will show you the ranges. So this is a typical range for Equifax, 350 to 950, with the higher being the better. TU, Experian, you kind of see all those ranges. Now, again, this is just a sample that what the mortgage industry uses. Like I mentioned, there are other versions too that have slightly different high and low ranges, but you just get the idea of this. You always want the highest number possible. So this is one of my favorite slides, and this is the odds chart here. And this is no different than if you go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City and want to bet on something, you always have the odds, right? Well, the mortgage lenders and car loan lenders, they all look at the odds too. And they look at it as, hey, if I loan money, what are the odds that we're going to get paid back? And when they run millions of simulations on this, they looked at it and said, okay, if we have an 800 credit score, then we have to write 1,292 loans before we have one that comes back on us with a problem. Conversely, if they loan below 620, 1 out of 8 is going to come back to them. So what they do is they draw these little lines and they say, okay, well, we're comfortable with 38 to 1, or we're comfortable with 123 to 1, or whatever it is. And what ends up happening is there may be a cutoff for an auto loan. A 5% interest rate versus an 8% interest rate may be sitting at 720. And if you're sitting at 719 and you're 1 point away, that could mean 3% on your interest rate. On a home, it can mean a quarter of a point, which over a 30-year loan could be tens of thousands of dollars. So, it's very important to understand that this is tiered, the way they do the pricing. And even with credit cards, they're going to rate, okay, if you're below 620, you're going to get a particular kind of credit card with a corresponding interest rate. So very important to kind of know that's the way the system is set up, and that's the way everything is played, so that you can sit there and say, hey, if you obviously want the highest credit score possible, but if you're sitting at one of those thresholds, very, very important to make sure that you're doing everything you can to get over to the next threshold. Particularly with mortgages, not only is it the mortgage interest rate, but if you get into mortgage insurance and other types of things, that too is impacted, and that can impact your monthly payment as well. So very important to kind of understand how that the odds chart works. So when they create these models, they're proprietary. They don't come out and they don't say, hey, here's our exact system. However, we've done this enough, and our competitors have done this enough to where we've been able to reverse engineer it. And we know with about 99% accuracy that certain actions are going to raise the credit score, and by how much, and also lower it by certain actions and how much that would do. So we have a pretty good idea, and we're going to go through those in the next few slides of what exactly corresponds to each action. But the important thing is to know it's all about data. So it's raw data that they're pulling, and that's what's generating your credit score. So it's just like anything else. If the data is wrong at the bureaus, if there's incorrect information, then of course that's going to impact your credit score in a negative way. So that's why later on we'll talk about how to make sure if there is incorrect information, how you can go and get it taken care of. So here's the grading scale, if you will. It's 35% of the credit score is made up of your past payment history. The next biggest chunk at 30% are your balances. Then it rolls at 15% of your credit history. Then 10% each for types of credit in use and your inquiries. Now we're going to go through each one of these, and we're going to go ahead and start with the past payment history, which is the biggest. So this is pretty simple. If you pay your bills on time, you're not going to have a problem in this category, and everything's, this is a huge chunk that you're going to be okay with. However, let's just assume that I just have my first late payment on a credit card. Well, now what's going to happen is it's going to be all about timing. And what happens is when I had that first late payment, for the first 6 months after it happens, my credit score is going to get hit the hardest. And let's just say that my credit score is a 700, just making up a number. And let's say my first late payment drops me 100 points. So now I'm down to 600. I'm going to be at 600 for that first 6 months. But then after 6 months, it's going to start to heal itself. And now instead of being hit 100 points, I may only get hit 70 or 80. So my credit score is going to go up after 6 months, after it starts to heal itself. And that's going to happen from month 7 to 23. And then at 2 years, the 24-month mark, that's where it's going to then drop down. The significance really starts to dwindle after that. So now maybe I'm only getting hit 20 or 30 points. And my credit score has gone up, let's say to 670 now, where it was down to 600. So it's going to heal itself. And then it's going to kind of ride at that same level for the remainder of the 7 years until it finally falls off the credit report. But 2 years is a very critical mark in the credit world. Before 2 years, you're going to get hit pretty hard. After 2 years, it is going to start to heal itself. So those are very important points to kind of take away there. The next piece are balances, and this is when we talk about student loans, car loans, and mortgages, that's fine. Those can be, pretty much at the high credit limit because those are longer term loans that take a long time to pay off. So what I'm going to say next doesn't really impact those types of loans. What balances we're talking about here are credit card balances, any kind of revolving charge card. So what happens is when you have a charge card and you have a limit, as you start to approach the high end of that limit, your credit score is going to start to go down. So let's just say you have $1,000 limit on a card. Well, if you owe $0, you're in good shape. If you owe, $250 to $300, as you approach that 30% mark, your score is going to go down. Once again, when you hit 50% used, it's going to go down even more. Then it's 70%, even more. And then when you're maxed out, it's going to go down the most. So why that's important is that we want to make sure that all of our credit cards are paid down as low as possible. And if you can't get them all down to zero, get them all under 70% used or under 50. If you can do that, get them under 30, because that's going to help you out with your credit utilization ratio. Sometimes people say, oh, well, I can have, all of my, balances on one credit card at 0% interest and it's maxed out. That can be detrimental sometimes because that one card has such a high utilization that it's going to hurt your credit score. So you don't want to do that. If, again, everything I'm saying is kind of just to put your best foot forward, to have the highest credit score possible. You don't really want to do that. If you have a card that's, sitting right at that 31, 32% threshold, you want to look at that and try to get that below the 30%. Absolutely, if you can. Revolving balances, again, this only impacts credit cards, and it only impacts credit cards that are with a balance or with a high credit limit of $25,000 or less. And the reason why is because credit cards that have very high limits, the models back 10 or 15 years ago couldn't determine whether that's really a credit card or whether that's a business line of credit or whether it's a home equity loan, because a lot of them you could borrow and pay back over time. So the model, just to be safe, said, hey, if it's over $25,000, we're going to take it out. We're not going to penalize them like we would on a normal credit card. So, if you do have somebody that has a, whatever reason, have a high credit limit there, you don't need to necessarily worry about paying that one down like you do the other ones. So I just did want to mention that. So one thing that's important on this slide here is that you want to be careful about closing revolving accounts. You don't want to have too many and you don't want to have too little. The best rule of thumb is between 3 and 5. And a lot of times if you just have one, then you don't have a thick enough credit history. But if you have 20, then that's a problem too, because the model is using all that and saying, hey, this person could go out tomorrow and max out and be severely indebted. So 3 to 5 is typically the amount that you want. If you're dealing with American Express, they don't normally report your your credit limit, because a lot of them don't have credit limits. But if you do have American Express, then it will always calculate the most you've ever charged on that card. So you want to be cognizant of that fact too, saying, hey, if you normally, spend $800 to $900 on the card a month, and all of a sudden you're at $800 or $900, well, the model's going to think that you're maxed out. So you need to use a little bit of caution with American Express if you're using them. So the next piece here is your credit history. And this is how long you've had your cards. And real quick, before I actually meant to stop on the last slide, does anybody have any questions so far? And I want to check the chat here. I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to ask a question if they have any. No. Okay. Okay. Okay, so the next piece here is your credit history. And this is how long you've had your accounts. And what's interesting about this is in the credit world, everything is time sensitive. So if you have a brand new credit card that was just opened up, well, for the first 4 to 6 months of that credit card's life, the model is going to be a little skittish on that and say, wait a minute, we don't know if this person can really handle this. So this loan hasn't seasoned yet. So you're going to take a little bit of a hit on your credit score. Once that account seasons, then your credit score is going to go up. And what happens is the date that you open that card, it starts with a little counter on the model. And it says, okay, 1 month, 2 months. And every month you have that card and you use it, that model counter keeps going up to where it maxes out at 99 months. So what happens is, if you're having your cards and you're using them, those counters are going to go up, and that's going to be positive for your credit history. What you don't want to do is open up a credit card, use it 1 or 2 months, and then stop using it, and then it just sits there. Because if there's no activity on that card, then the counter will maybe stay stuck at 2 or 3 months, and the model always thinks that you have a brand new credit card. So then your score will stay artificially lower. So you want to, if you have a credit card, you want to be using them at least once a month, even if it's just putting a tank of gas or a couple bucks here, whatever it is, just use it once a month and pay it off. So you keep that counter going, so you establish this long credit history. Conversely, if you have a bunch of older credit cards that are sitting at 99 months, and you, for whatever reason, you say, I don't really want to have this creditor anymore, so you cancel them. Well, now your oldest trade line might be significantly less than that. And the model doesn't like that. They want to see older trade lines. So again, you want to use extreme caution when you're closing accounts, and also when you are opening accounts, you want to be strategic about it. Open one and make sure you're using it every single month, so you can get a good credit history on there. So the next piece here are types of credit in use. And really the model does not like finance companies. So, I'll explain what a finance company is. It's basically a creditor where you can only use that line of credit at a particular store. Like it's home electronics, it's popular, that kind of thing, where you can only use it at their one store. You want to try to go for accounts where it's like a Visa, MasterCard, where you can use it anywhere, at the grocery store, at Home Depot, whatever. That's kind of how you know whether you're dealing with a finance company or not. Because when they go back through the samples, the finance company loans tend to have a much higher default rate. So the model is a penalty involved with that. So that's why we recommend to try to stay away from those if you can. Okay, so the next piece of the puzzle are the inquiries. And this allows 50 to 60 points of your credit score is available for an inquiry. Now, an inquiry is when a creditor comes and accesses your credit report. And there are actually two types. There's a hard inquiry and there's a soft inquiry. The hard inquiry is when you're actually applying for credit. It's saying, hey, I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, and I'm putting my name on the application to have an extension of credit. The soft inquiry is where you as a consumer may check your credit report. A soft inquiry may also be where a current creditor that you have goes in periodically and looks at your credit and just kind of sees, okay, is this person still paying their bills, and can we still keep their credit lines the same and everything. So soft pulls do not count against your credit score at all. You can have as many of those as you want, not a problem. The hard inquiries, they do impact your credit score. And what happens is you've got this 50 to 60 point range that's available for inquiries. And when the credit score model first came out, what happened was, people would go shopping for a car, and they would start off in the morning at the Ford dealership and they'd have a 700 credit score. And then, they'd keep going to other dealerships. And by the end of the day, maybe they ended at the Honda dealer and their score was 50 points less because each dealership had pulled their credit report. Well, that was so unfair on so many levels. So the models corrected that. And they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to allow consumers to shop. And we're going to give them a span of time where they can have their hard inquiries pulled, as many times as they want, theoretically. And what happens, it depends on what scoring model you're using, whether it's applying for a credit card, a mortgage, or installment loan. But that ranges anywhere from 14 days to 45 days. So for simplicity, we're just going to say it's a 30-day span, because that's pretty typical. And what that means is you can go have your credit report pulled one time or 100, and it's going to stop counting. It's not going to, after that first one, your credit score will not be impacted for that time period where you're allowed to shop. So that's important, because if you are going to go and apply at multiple lenders for something like multiple credit card companies, or you're shopping for a car and you want to have dealers be competitive with you, it's important to do that in as short a time period as possible. So that's the key takeaway there. Just do it as soon as you can. That way your score won't be impacted. The worst thing to do is have your credit report pulled today and then wait, till March, and then wait again till June. You keep doing it and you're outside of those time spans, and then you're getting hit each time with a new inquiry. So you want to avoid that. And so here we go. So the top tips, we've kind of talked about these, and that is, number one, you want to pay down all your credit cards below 30% of the balance. You don't want to close or open accounts unless you've really planned out and looked at your total credit history. And one of the key pieces on this is, if you want to look at your credit report, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. There's all kinds of consumer models out there, but what we recommend is to go to annualcreditreport.com. And that is where the federal government mandates that each consumer receives a copy of their credit report once each year. And they can go onto the site, they get it for free. And if there are any problems, they can address them right then and there. And they can say, hey, this isn't right, I want to challenge this, or whatever. So that is a great resource to know about and to utilize. Again, it's free and you can just take advantage of it. If you're actually in the market, for purchasing a house with a mortgage, then companies, Tidewater Home Funding, they have the ability to help counsel you through that, internally when you're applying for a loan. But if you're just out there and you're not applying for anything and you just want to know, hey, how can I check my credit report and how can I help it out? That's the way you can do it, annualcreditreport.com. So, again, here we don't want to consolidate debt onto one or two cards and close the other ones. We want to try to keep them all open. We want to keep them all being utilized each and every single month. And that's the best way to go about it. Now, a couple things that's really new right now that you may have already heard about, and that is what's called self-reported items. Now, right now you have no control over who reports what on your credit report, right? If you have a car loan, if you have a student loan, whatever. Well, now Experian is an example. It's called Experian Boost. They have an option where you can go onto their site and you can upload positive payment history for things that aren't typically reported. Maybe it's a rental. You've been renting from a landlord that doesn't report. Maybe it's utility or whatever it may be. You can go in and you can self-report now to Experian. So right now, it's kind of at the beginning stages where it doesn't help all of your credit score models. Like, it's not going to help on the mortgage side right now at all, but it can help on some of the consumer models where it may help you get a credit card or even an auto loan. So what you want to do is kind of think about that and know that that's a resource for you, to where, if you basically haven't had as much credit as you'd like and you want to add some things, you can go there and you can self-report some items, which over time will help. But we think as the industry kind of evolves, we think that's going to become a much bigger player over the next 3 to 5 years. And hopefully the mortgage industry will start to pick up on those, and other models will too. But as of right now, they don't, but it's definitely worth still taking a look at, and possibly self-reporting some of your items on your credit report to enhance your consumer credit score. So again, we want to make sure we're reviewing all of our accounts for accuracy. And I just told you, annualcreditreport.com is a great place to go to start that process. You want to, it sounds like a no-brainer, but you always want to make your payments on time. And, in this day and age with so many automated systems out there, your credit card, you can automatically set them now to say, hey, I want to automatically make the minimum payment every single month when it's due. And then you don't have to ever worry about it. You can, of course, pay more, but at least you've taken out that risk of having, something late. Now, one thing about late payments, I see a question here. We have a question about Navy Federal. Hold on one second here. Okay, so hacked into your account. So hold on one. Okay, I'm going to answer that. Somebody hacked into somebody's account. So when that happens, there's a couple of things that you want to do. Number one, the most important thing is you want to call the creditor and make sure that they're aware of it. And once you've done that, then they're going to work with you on doing a police report and trying to figure out what damage was done. Sometimes they can get to this early enough to where they really minimize the damage. But, if it's a widespread problem, then you got to make sure, hey, we lock it down. Number two, you want to make sure that you have a police report initiated, because later on, if it really becomes an issue where it's impacted your credit, you're going to want to have that police report to go to the bureaus to prove identity theft and have things corrected. It's much easier at that point in time if you do have a police report. But of course, the first action is making sure that you contact that creditor and other things. Now, let me see, is there another question here? Okay, so hopefully that answered that question, but that would be my my recommendation. So one thing here about late payments, a lot of times people have a misconception of, well, when am I really late? And so I want to give an example, and that is, let's just say I have a credit card and it's due on January 1st, and I don't pay it. Okay, well, by about January 10th or January 15th, my credit card company is going to hit me with a late fee, $50 late fee or 30, whatever it is. And they're going to say, I'm late, and they're going to start the process of sending out letters or emails or whatever. Well, at that point, a lot of consumers say, oh my gosh, I'm already late, so let me just wait and I'll just deal with this next month. You don't want to do that, because in the eyes of the credit bureaus and the repositories and what they're allowed to do, they cannot say that you're 30 days late until it's truly been 30 days. So no late payments can show up on your credit report until that time has expired. So even though internally a credit card company says you're late, you'd have to actually wait till February 1st, in my example here, before they could actually report it to the bureaus. So that's why if you ever do find yourself with an accidental late payment or something, pay it as soon as you can, because if it's inside of that 30-day window, they can't report it to the bureaus. So that's a very, very important thing that we see all the time, where people just don't realize that, and then they end up getting a late payment when they could have stopped it in time. Let's see, we have another question that just came in here, so let me read that one. Should one have to help them buy a house? Yeah, so that's a good question here. So what we're talking about here are different types of accounts, and they all kind of work in tandem. And the mortgage is obviously going to be the biggest piece of the puzzle here for most people. So what happens is, over time, if you do go in and have a credit card, you do have other types of accounts, that's all going to help your credit history. You always want to have between 3 and 5 revolving type of charge cards. You can have as many as many student loans and as many mortgages as you want, but there's a certain minimum that you want to have, and that is definitely getting some revolving charge cards on the credit report so you can establish a credit history. If you go to pull your credit report, or if your lender goes to pull your credit report and you don't have enough active trade line and data, then it won't even generate a credit score for you. And that's a problem, because then they can't run it through the automated underwriting and they can't even get you qualified. So it's very important to have multiple different accounts that are being paid on to establish your credit history. And let me see here, this next one. Oh yeah, okay, so someone else asked about removing bad debt. And yes, the question is, hey, if I have something after 7 years, they have to remove it. And that is absolutely correct. And again, that's dictated by the FCRA, which is the Federal Credit Reporting Act. And that there's a law. They can't mess with that. They have to legally take it off. Now, what that means is they're supposed to do it, but sometimes they may be, for whatever reason, it may slip through the cracks, which is why it's important for you to go look at your credit report every single year and see, okay, if you did happen to have something that was 6.5 or almost 7 years old, you want to keep an eye on that and make sure it really does fall off when it's supposed to fall off. And if it doesn't, then you can reach out to the bureaus and say, hey, this is older than 7 years, and they'll take it off immediately. So very, very important to monitor that and make sure you're staying on that. So again, we want to limit our revolving indebtedness. We want to, oh, here we get another question. Great, I love these questions. Why is it so hard to open a credit card? Every time I tried to apply, the business gave me, let me see here, I want to read this out, saying denied. Why does that keep happening? So that's an excellent question. And why that happens is when they pull, they're either getting no information, they're not getting a credit score because there's not other trade lines on there. That's probably the reason why, or there may be something derogatory on the credit report that's preventing them from underwriting that application. So the first thing I would say is, number one, check your credit report, make sure there's nothing on there that shouldn't be on there. And then number two, what you can do is try to go and if you can't get a unsecured credit card, ask for a secured credit card. And the difference is, the secured credit card, they'll say, hey, give us $300 and we'll give you a credit card with a $300 limit. And a lot of times people say, well, that's silly. Why am I going to do that? Well, the reason why is because you want to make sure that they're, you want to ask them and say, if I get a secured credit card, you will report this to all 3 bureaus. And as long as they say yes, then you want to do that. Then they'll establish a history with you that way. And then over time, once you have the secured credit card with a payment history, then you can go back and apply for an unsecured credit card. So it's kind of a couple step process. And we see this a lot with people that are just coming out of school and they just have no credit and they apply and yet they don't get anything. Well, a lot of times you have to maybe go the secured credit card route to try to get things jump started. Another thing is you want to make sure that whatever creditors you apply to are reporting at all 3 bureaus. And like we talked about at the very beginning, there are some creditors that just report to 1 bureau, even to this day. There's not that many of them, but maybe some small credit unions or banks or something will only report to 1 bureau, but that doesn't do you any good. You have to have them report to all 3. Otherwise, you won't generate the credit scores at the other bureaus. So hopefully that answers that question. Let me see. Why is it so hard? Okay, what about collection activities? How soon would they fall off? So the collections, same situation, they fall off after 7 years. So that's going to come off after 7 years. Now with collections, you have to be careful because sometimes they can trick consumers, and believe me, they're really good at this. So what they may do is they may say, hey, hey consumer, you have a collection with us, but why don't we go ahead and settle or make a payment arrangement or something like that. And if they do that and you agree to then do another installment with them, well, they can then change the date of last activity. They can then change things, which then can kind of change that date. So you got to be careful with the way collections and stuff are done. You always just want to find out who the collection company is. You want to go to them directly. And what you want to say is, hey, I want to make sure this is taken care of. I want a receipt from you showing that it's been satisfied today. And I want this reported to the bureaus immediately. And if you're very firm on those things, then you'll be fine. And then you'll have the documentation to back you up, so that, let's just say, Equifax and TransUnion do update, and that's fine. But Experian, for some reason, doesn't. Well, now you've got your paper trail, you've got the document that you can easily send to Experian and say, hey, this needs to be updated by removed off my credit report. So, but yeah, if it's the law, they can't. Once it's 7 years old, it has to legally come off. So I pay my balance off every month, zero balance, and keep my card under 30%, but my score keeps going down. So, okay, this is a good question. And a lot of times what we see is, other types of things are happening here. So we want to see, number one, were there any other inquiries on the credit report? Number two, are there any mistakes on the credit report? A lot of times when we have juniors and seniors, people with similar names that lived at the same address, sometimes the information can cross over. Excuse me. Sometimes someone co-signs for a loan for somebody and they forget about it, and all of a sudden that loan becomes delinquent or something. So the most important thing you want to look at here is you want to get your credit report and you want to look at it and see exactly what is on it at all three of the bureaus. And you're doing the right thing. You're keeping your card under 30%. Now, the one thing I always want to clarify is, when you say 30%, we want to make sure that's under 30% at any time throughout the whole entire month. Because what sometimes happens, and think of the credit world as like a movie reel where you've got all these different clips. Well, it's just taking a random snapshot at any point in time. So if I have a credit card, and let's just say has $1,000 limit, and I keep it at zero, but I go out tomorrow and buy a TV for $1,000, buy it tomorrow, and then pay it off in 3 days, even though it's still below the 30%, if that snapshot was taken at that moment in time where my balance showed $1,000, well, then I'm way over. So, you want to make sure that you keep it under 30% at all times. And it seems like you did. So I don't think that's the culprit, but I at least wanted to illustrate that as a really good call out. Keeping the balance zero. So in this case, what I would recommend is to probably, again, assuming there are no mistakes on the credit report and there's no derogatory information that you're unaware of that there's a mistake, then it's probably a good idea to try to get another credit card and then use that one every single month too. And then over time, help build your credit score. And, if it keeps going down, I'm also curious to ask, is it just a couple of points? Or are we talking about, is there a significant drop? If you're gone from, 15, 20 points down, that's a big deal. Whereas 2 or 3 points, you can kind of expect the fluctuations of just normal time to kind of, moving that round. But yeah, if you're seeing 15, 20, 50 point drops, then there's definitely a problem there and you need to investigate that. Next question here, to piggyback off the 7-year question, I had a 10-year-old credit card with a credit union and it was in collections. When I received my tax refund at the credit union, they took the balance from that card. Was that illegal? So there's two different things going on here. There's what can be on the credit report and on your credit score, and then there's what happens in the court systems of collection of debt. Now, the Fair Credit Reporting Act for credit reports is national. Every single state is the exact same. Those are the perimeters. As far as, even if it's not on your credit report anymore, what happens is different states have different statute of limitations. And most of the time, some states are like 3 years. And then after that, the creditor can't collect on it. Other ones are more than that. So what may be happening here is that there is a jurisdiction where they can go after it, not on your credit report, but they can still go after it through the court system, through garnishing wages or getting a court order or things like that. So they're completely separate. Going to court and trying to get a collection is different. But what is true is that they can't put it on your credit report after the 7-year mark. Or if it's in the case of a bankruptcy, they can't put it on after the 10-year mark. And in this case, because it's a 10-year-old credit card, then we want to check and see, number one, when was that date of last activity? Because sometimes it may seem like the credit card was 10 years old, but if a consumer goes in and does any action on it, it can reset that clock. So if you said, hey, 2 years ago, someone came in and made a payment arrangement or worked a deal or something like that, then yes, those dates can change and that would change things. So That would require a little more investigation. And what I would do is when you do go to annual credit report and get that credit report, look at those dates and see when that account was initially opened, see when it was placed in collection, and see what the current status is on that, and make sure those dates line up with what you think that they should be. What is the best interest rate for credit card approval? So interest rates are a funny thing. They really vary all over the place. And what you'll find is that credit cards that have a lot of rewards, that give you a lot of money back or points or whatever, they tend to have the higher interest rates. Some of the other credit cards that don't really have many frills, they may have the lower interest rates. Or if it's an institution that you bank with, they may, it just really just depends. But typically, with the credit card rate, you're going to see that's completely a function of your credit score. So again, we want to make sure you have the highest credit score possible and get the best interest rate. Now, the most important thing is if you're just trying to build credit, you just want to get any credit card and just use it once a month just to establish the credit history. Then later on, you can call that credit card company, and if it's a high rate that you're not happy with, a lot of times you can negotiate with them and say, hey, look, I've 15% or 20%, doesn't seem right. What can you do for me? And then a lot of times they can negotiate that down after you have a payment history with them. So the next question here, which is a great one, is this the law for Virginia only? And no, the Fair Credit Reporting Act is a national law that impacts every single citizen in the United States and every single creditor that reports. So that is nothing to do with Virginia. On a local level, when you're dealing with the lawsuits and people suing in court, yes, that does come down to jurisdiction inside of Virginia, and then that's all going to depend on what the rules are there and the burden of proof. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so here's a question. I use my TJ Maxx card for major purchases and pay it off every month. I use it for the rewards. Is that good? So a lot of people use that strategy. It seems like you're doing the right thing. You're paying it off every month, which is fantastic. And so you're not carrying a balance. You're not paying all that interest. So the only thing I would caution you on is just to say, make sure that if you have a big purchase coming up, let's just say you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car. Let's say your goal is to do it in May. Then what I would do is starting in March, I wouldn't have any big balances on that card. Keep it low. Don't put anything on it, because you want to make sure that when your credit report is pulled for an application for credit, that the balance is pretty much zero and you get a higher credit score to get your car or your house or whatever. Now, if you've just bought a house, you just bought a car, and you're not going to apply for anything for a while, then sure, what you're doing is fine. But again, if that snapshot is taken on a month where you've made a lot of purchases before you've paid it off, then your score could go down. But again, it's going to just depend on the situation. How should we go about repos, settle payment, or just forget about it, cell phone bills? Okay, so this is another really good question. It's very topical right now. With everything we've been through with COVID, we're seeing that a lot of creditors are really working with consumers. So what happens is, the best advice I can give you is you don't want to just ignore it. You want to contact your creditor, and you want to, whatever that backstory is. There's so much that's been going on, and maybe somebody had a bank account change and the payments didn't go through, or whatever. The most important thing is to reach out to a creditor and preferably, get your backstory straightened out as to, hey, here's what happened, here's why this happened, and here's what we're asking for. Contact that creditor and say, hey, look, I'm trying to buy, a car or a house coming up, and this is a real problem for me. It's hurting my credit score. So, is there an opportunity to, number one, you can just pay it off or negotiate it out. Number two, you can also ask if there's extenuating circumstances. You can make that case and say, hey, this was right in the middle of COVID. There was a lot of forbearance issues going on. Can I get a deletion letter and have this just removed completely from my credit report? So creditors, again, it's the creditor's discretion to do that, but it's always worth asking for if you have, a documentable story that you can bring up to them and say, hey, this is why we've gone through a tough time, whatever that case may be. Bring it to their attention, talk to a supervisor, and see if you can have it just deleted entirely. If you can't get it deleted entirely, then make the arrangement and say, hey, we're gonna settle for this, we're gonna pay today. But always, no matter what you do, always get that receipt so that you always have that proof that you can go back to the bureaus and say, hey, we really did pay this and it's still not showing up. And typically when you do make those arrangements with the creditor, their obligation is to report back to the Bureau, but we just want to ensure that they're doing that. And that's why you always ask for the documentation. Is the Dun & Bradstreet best for business? Best to use for business credit? And how does it work? Yeah, so Dun & Bradstreet is very, very much very similar, but it's for businesses, and it's going to basically keep track of the businesses. And as time goes on, a lot of business owners kind of co-sign for their business and back and forth and stuff. So a lot of times you may have a business that has credit on its own, but you also may have joint credit with the business because you've co-signed for particular loans. Anything that you co-sign will be on your personal credit report, just like any other debt will. But the Dun & Bradstreet is a report that's for business. And by the way, Experian, Equifax, they also have versions of business credit reports too that just cater to the business. What is the difference between my credit from my FICO score? What is it between my credit? Oh, okay. So I think what this is, okay, this is a good question. What is the difference between the different, like these are my credit card, there's all kinds of different consumer models out there. And then there's the FICO and there's different versions. So think of it like this. Think of it like different versions of your software on your phone, operating system, or your computer, Windows, whatever. And what happens is there's all these different models that are out there and they all are looking for different things. So you may very well go to one particular consumer site and you may have an 800 credit score and you think, hey, I'm in great shape. But then you go to a lender and the lender pulls the credit report and they say, hey, you have a 700. And you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Well, the reason why is because different models are looking for different things. And in the mortgage world, we have the strictest credit scores going. They penalize the most for everything. And you'll typically find your mortgage scores lower than all your consumer scores and everything like that, because they're penalizing collections more. They're penalizing medical collections even, whereas a consumer score is not going to penalize that to quite the extent. So that's why you see these discrepancies in credit score. So that's why it's very important that when you are getting ready, especially with a house, you definitely want to sit down with a lender ahead of time and get it and figure out, hey, this is where I'm at right now. These are the mortgage credit scores that we're going to be using. And then you can work off of improving those and making sure those are where you need to be, instead of just going with some consumer score that's out there that may be fine for a credit card or maybe fine for insurance, but it's not going to be okay for the for a mortgage, because again, they're looking for different things and grading things differently. Okay, and yes, the session is being recorded. And let's see. Another question. I love all these questions. This is great. I have some closed credit card accounts and I'm making monthly payments. How will that affect my credit score? So the most important thing is you want to make sure that there are no rolling lates with anything that's closed that you're still making payments on. And, again, you want to make sure you're accessing your credit report and making sure that it's being, you're getting credit each month for having made that payment and there's nothing, left behind. Sometimes what happens is somebody, for whatever reason, when an account gets closed, they didn't pay the month, but then they skip a month and they get back on track and they start paying it every month. But the problem is, because they missed that month, the model always thinks they're 1 month behind. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. It's an easy mistake to happen, but you want to make sure it doesn't. And that, number one, everything's being reported as current every single month. And if you do that, then over time, you just want to get that credit card paid off as soon as possible and just add it a picture, because if it's closed, then typically what can happen is the credit limit can keep going down every time you pay it off. So let's say you had a $1,000 limit, $1,000 balance, then they close it, but you pay 800, but then they lower to 800. So it always looks like you're maxed out. So you want to try to avoid that and just get that credit card taken care of as quickly as possible and off your credit report. So my FICO. So again, my FICO, there's a lot of different ones out there that are selling you different versions. And it's impossible to say which version it is unless once they disclose it. But I will say there's a very popular one right now called the Vantage score. That is a great score because it doesn't penalize medical collections. is, at all, and it really kind of looks at different things. So that particular credit score model, you're going to have a much higher credit score than you are if you're using the FICO models that the mortgage industry uses. So again, there's the differences there, but we really feel that over time, the mortgage industry is actually looking at different scores right now, and we're really hoping that they do adapt some of those other better models that are out there. But we can't, in the mortgage space, they can't make those decisions. It has to all come from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who dictate everything in the mortgage space. Now, car loans and credit cards, they have a little more discretion, and they can then pick and choose which models they want to use, or even build their own. Another question here. So I had opened up a SunTrust bank account. Let's see here. I put at least $600 in my account. The next day I was trying to deposit money into my account. They had told me that my account was closed. Well, that doesn't seem right. I think you need to absolutely go to the manager, to a branch manager at SunTrust, and find out what is going on and why they did that. If you had other loans with them, they may have taken that and applied that to a past loan. If you haven't had another loan with them, then something's really off. And I would definitely go to the manager at the branch, call the manager, go in there, whatever, and had that addressed, because something is clearly not right there. Sorry that happened to you. Okay, with the utilization at 47% and 2 accounts in collection, which has the greatest impact. Pay in the account with a utilization of 47%. And 2 accounts in collections, which has a greater impact. Oh, hands down, the utilization. You want to always go for the utilization. Typically, collections, just paying them in and of itself, most of the time doesn't. I mean, it can help the credit score, but most of the time, the fact that it's already on there as a collection, you're already taking that hit for it. So whether it's paid or not, again, you have to model it out and see how many points you'll get for doing that. But I can say, as a general rule, if I had to choose between the two, I would always go with the utilization, getting that utilization down every single time, because we know that's going to absolutely increase your credit score. Paying the account in collection. Yeah. If my student loan is forgiven, will my score go up? Well, student loans are, again, you can have as many of them as you want, and that's as long as they're being paid on time, they're okay. It helps your payment history. So, if you have other credit cards and other trade lines on your credit report, you're going to be just fine. And if it's forgiven, then that's a great thing. And take the zero payment, the zero payment, the zero balance, and move on. That's a great thing. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But again, make sure, if someone tells you something and says it's zero, not to pay on it anymore, trust but verify. Seriously, go in, make sure you're pulling your credit report, make sure that student loan balance shows zero and that it's been closed out. Even call the student loan servicer and confirm that, because the last thing you want is to think it's paid off and then it's just been transferred somewhere else and you still owe it, and then you end up with a late payment. So always double verify all that kind of stuff. Let's see if my student loan, we just did that one. Yeah, so this is one about, where to get an accurate credit score. So it depends on what you're going to be purchasing. I mean, if you're in the market for, a mortgage, then the best place to go is to the mortgage company. The Tidewater Home Funding is a great place to go and just say, hey, I'm applying for a loan. I need to have my mortgage credit report, and you'll get the real deal there. If it's a credit card or a car loan, then what you can also do is when you go on to annualcreditreport.com, they do offer a service where you can pay to buy your MyFICO. Again, that's going to give you just a rough idea. It's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be, a resource for you. So I would say, if it's mortgage, you want to go to the mortgage company, have the report pulled there. If it's anything else, then you probably can get by with doing MyFICO off of the annualcreditreport.com site. And I think it's $8.95 or something like that. $8.95 is what they'll charge you for that, if I'm not mistaken. In Credit Karma's, we do hear that a lot. I mean, they do give a lot of free services, but keep in mind how they provide that information for you for free is because they're soliciting you with other types of offers and everything, which, that's fine if you're in the market for a credit card or something like that. but their model is definitely not what's used in some other lending areas. So you want to be careful with that. How much off is Credit Karma? Well, and again, it's going to depend. How far these models are off really does depend on the actual credit file. I mean, somebody that's maybe just out of school that has maybe 2 credit cards, it may be, a lot more of a spread than somebody that's got 10 mortgages and has been in the credit world for 40 years and has no late payments and stuff. So it's really just going to kind of depend on each individual credit situation. And that statement actually is true with so many things with credit. I mean, it really, each situation is so unique and so different because you got so many moving pieces. You got the time element, you have how many cards they have, you have how many trade lines they have, and then any activity. So let's see here. So one of the great websites that I recommend where to go for more information is myfico.com. That's a great, if you just Google that, it'll come up, and then a lot of what you saw tonight is they kind of expand on some things and give you kind of their take on what we went over tonight. But that is a great place to go to get more information. I would absolutely recommend MyFICO. Why did you say to avoid accounts with spouses? Okay, so yeah, that's a good question. And what I mean by that, and again, this is just from a purely credit perspective of making sure that you're trying to protect your credit. When you have joint, it's okay if you want to have a joint account, like let's just say you want to have a joint account to do miles or airline miles or whatever, then that's fine. But you always want to make sure that you have credit in your own name. And the reason why is because if you have joint credit only and something gets hacked, someone takes advantage of that card, and then you don't have access to that for a while, well, you're going to be dead in the water there for a while until you get it figured out. If there's an identity theft problem, let's just say one spouse is a victim of identity theft, well, now both spouses are kind of in trouble until this gets resolved. By having your own credit card, then you kind of insulate yourself so that you still have another way to make purchases and have credit while that ongoing stuff is happening. So that's what I mean by that. So you want to try to avoid having everything all in the same bucket. You also want to be careful about co-signing, and a lot of times we see this all the time where somebody comes in and says, "Hey, my credit report has a 1 times 30 on a car loan. It's not my car." And then after we do some discovery, we find out that, oh yeah, they co-signed for a cousin 4 years ago, and then of course now the payment wasn't made. They're getting ready to buy a house and their credit scores dropped 100 points. So you always want to just be very careful if you are going to co-sign or if you're going to have any joint accounts, and make sure that you're monitoring those every single month, that they're being paid on time. You have access to that account, and then if for some reason it's not paid, then you're going to need to go on and make that payment. And a lot of times people say, well, I can't afford to make another card payment. Well, then realize that it's your obligation, and there's no credit bureaus, there's no differentiation between whether you paid it or the other person paid it. If it's on your credit report and you're responsible for it, then you're going to take the hit if there's a late payment or a collection or anything like that. So you want to be very, very careful about that. So that's that. Friendly alert. Okay, I'm sorry, I've gone way over, so I apologize. I know we've had some great questions. Do you want, Ollie, do you want me to keep going with the questions? I think you have several more here, or do you want to go ahead and we can pick this back up at the next session?
I'm okay on my time. TC, do you feel differently?
No, this is good. Let's go for a couple more minutes. But we're just for those who, as far as the time, we're going to just extend it just a few minutes to get a few more questions, and then we'll close out in prayer. But these are great engagement, great questions. This has helped me. So David, keep on helping people. Come on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, these are great questions. I love it. I love it. So looking to purchase a home in 6 months, how does selling a car reflect on the score? So it's going to depend again on how many other trade lines we're talking about. If that's your only trade line, then it could be a problem because you may not have enough to generate a score after that. But if you have other, like maybe student loans, or if you have, another mortgage or credit cards, then you'll be okay. And, the car is an installment loan, so that should be fine. As long as you have at least 2 other accounts on your credit report, you should be okay on that one. I want to buy a car now, but want to buy a house in a year. Will the car loan hurt me? So as far as credit goes, no, you'll be okay because the car loan will start, it will season, and then you'll have a good payment history on the car loan. So from a credit perspective, yes, but I can't speak to the debt to income ratio. That's a mortgage question because, obviously if you take on a really, really expensive car payment, then that could eat into how much you can, pay for your mortgage. So, but assuming that the debt to income is fine, with the car payment being reasonable and you having plenty of money to pay the house and the car, assuming that's true, then yes, you'd be fine to buy the car now. And it's probably a good idea to do it now and let some time go by so that account can season. And then when you do apply for the mortgage, you have a higher credit score. Student loans, they're not going to forgive them because other people took time to pay the student loan. So why would the government delete yours? Okay, yeah, that's I guess another question. You're right. There's different policies and we don't know what will really happen there, but we do know that some student loans are forgiven for service. Like if you particularly graduate and you have a particular degree and you go into a particular service that the government needs or something, they will forgive those loans after a period of time. So we do know what happens. But as far as blanket, we don't really know how that's gonna shape up at this point in time. What is considered a good credit score? So really in the lending world, we see, seven, I would say that, when you start to see like 740, 760 or higher, you're in really, really good shape. If you're under 700, then I would definitely strive to do some things to get it higher. We definitely, from what I see in the lending space and with mortgage insurance and stuff, once you start to drop below that 720, 740 threshold, rates can start to tick up or private mortgage insurance can go up. So again, I'd really try to be in the mid to high sevens if at all possible. But that's not to say, they definitely have programs out there for lower credit scores. But again, to put your best foot forward, I would definitely want to be in the mid to high sevens. Okay. Let's see here. I got another question. Okay, ask away. Good. I like that. It'll be 9 years. Okay, so it'll be 9 years since a bankruptcy. When would it be possible to have it removed? Would it be possible to have it removed sooner? No. Unfortunately, no. It's gonna stay there. But the good news is at 9 years, it's almost off. So just hang in there, and once it goes, that'll go away. But in the meantime, you want to make sure that you're establishing other types of credit. Just anything, credit card, just get it, pay it, use it. And that way, when it falls off in a year, you'll be in great shape, really great shape. How would you recommend getting late payments removed? So I would recommend finding out why the late payment happened, coming up with your backstory, if it's you, your spouse, whatever, your partner, whatever, and saying, okay, we have a late payment here. And what was the reason that happened? And really kind of write down the reason. And a lot of times, if you have a nice account that's been long established and you just have one late payment kind of sticking out in the middle of nowhere, and especially if it's been in the last 2 years with everything with COVID and everything going on, then there's a high likelihood that you can call the creditor. And again, I really would recommend, asking for a manager or a supervisor, because the first person that answers the phone, a lot of times they're not empowered to make those decisions. They're kind of just like, here's your balance, or we can make a payment over the phone. So you really need to kind of go to a supervisor or manager that can be empowered to make a decision and say, hey, look, here's our situation. We changed banks. We thought the automated thing was going to happen, or whatever the story is. Organize the backstory and then explain it to them, and then ask and say, hey, I'm getting ready to buy a house or getting ready to buy a car. This is adversely impacting my ability to get the loan I want. So can you please, can we get a deletion letter and have this removed? And they'll look at it and say, wow, you've been a customer for 5 years. This is the only time this has happened. Okay, we'll do that. Again, it's their discretion to do it or not. But I will say, doing this a long time, we've seen a lot more success the last year, 2 years than we've ever seen before, by people just taking that time to ask and lay out their story as to what happened. So that would be my recommendation on how to get some derogatory information removed. So someone tried to increase their credit limit on the credit card, but it got denied. And the reason why was because the credit score threshold wasn't there, or the income wasn't there. So what I would do is, and again, they may be using income from years ago, and your income may be completely different now. So what I would recommend is going back and making sure, number one, your income is correct, because they are using income. And number two, finding out if there's something on your credit report that's causing a lower credit score, and then ask them, say, what credit score were you looking for here? I mean, what can I do? Is there another card I can get in the interim or something like that? So that would be, those are probably one of the two reasons why. And why do you, oh, this is a great segue. Wow, someone was reading our mind. Why do companies ask about your income if they know your credit score? Well, they want to make sure that you can pay the loan back. And it comes down to credit and capacity. They want to make sure that, there's enough income there to do it. And they have different tiers. And it's not a perfect system, but they know that if you make X amount of money, then they feel like, okay, this is probably a good range that you can be in for taking on revolving debt or something like that. And of course, when you get into the house, I mean, it's now a federal law that you have to have different types of tests and everything put in place to make sure that when someone's buying a house, they can really afford the house, because nobody wants to, who wants to go into a situation where your mortgage payment is more than you're making? I mean, that's just not going to be successful. So that's the reason why they do that. But again, a lot of times the information could be stale or it could be old, or it's just there's two income earners in the family and you're just using one. So you want to make sure that you bring all that information up to date. Oh, here's a good question about, and I'll see if let's see 23. So we'll do this one here. This is a really important one. What do I think about companies that charge you money to fix your credit? And I don't recommend it. I don't like that, because what happens is they take a lot of money, and that's money that you could be using to pay down your bills or saving for a house or for the down payment or whatever. So I would stay away from that. What I would recommend is to try to go to a nonprofit. If there's a nonprofit agency that you could go to if you're interested in doing that, or taking this information here, going to myfico.com and really analyzing your own credit report, looking at it, making sure all your debts are paid, making sure that you're doing all the things we talked about tonight to try to help you out there. That would be what I'd recommend, because some of these credit counseling companies can charge a lot of money, and at the end of the day, you've sunk a lot of money into something where you could have just paid down your debts.